Howdy hey, how is everybody doing, and welcome back to Disney Daily. Today's video is my second fan fiction, and this one is all about one of my favorite movies, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I have personally had a lot of different questions after watching the movie, and some I have attempted to answer, such as who was Jack before he died. But today we are focusing on the question, how exactly did Jack meet Sally? What's interesting is the backstory of their relationship isn't really fleshed out in the movie. All we know is that they are dear friends, according to a direct quote from Jack. However, there is a video game called The Pumpkin King, which does go into some history between the two, and essentially Sally is saved from Oogie Boogie by Jack, and that is how they first met. While the game does give us a story about the two's first meeting, I don't find it very engaging or poetic. So I thought I would write my own story, and thus my fan fiction was born. Now, to give you some context, my story takes place a couple of years before the events in the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas. Alright, now without further ado, here is part one of how Jack met Sally. It was a couple of days before Halloween, and the residents of good old Halloween Town were full of cheer. After all, this was their favorite time of the year. The air was icy cold with a slight breeze, and the moon was full with a bright yellow glow. The air smelled like fresh pumpkins, which had been newly carved by the town's vampires, who were relieved to be cutting into any food other than garlic. The witches could be heard giggling nearby as they each attempted to cast a new spell on a wild toad by a nearby pond. The rest of the residents were going around setting up various decorations such as flying bats or skulls. Jack was helping the mayor hang posters throughout the town. The posters were rather large and could be seen from miles away. They were bright orange and said, "Come one, come all to the Hallows Eve ball. There will be food, drinks, and dancing. Where? The town hall banquet room. When? 6 p.m. sharp. Don't miss out on a frightening good time." This was something out of the ordinary for the town. You see, in years past, the town didn't really do anything special before Halloween took place in the human world, but this year was different. A week prior to this day, at the town's weekly meeting, Jack had suggested that they throw a Halloween ball for all of the residents to enjoy. He thought it would be a fun way to kickstart the holiday and get everyone excited, as well as a way for everyone to get to know each other better since some of the residents were new. After hanging the last poster, the mayor turned to Jack and said, "I have to say, Jack, this ball just might be one of your best ideas yet, and that is saying a lot because you are full of them." Jack chuckled. "Thank you, Mayor." Zero started to bark hysterically and began to circle Jack's legs. "All right, Zero, time to eat. I know. Well, Mayor, I shall see you tomorrow night at the Halloween ball, but now I must get home to feed Zero and decide on a nice, sophisticated outfit for the ball." The mayor waved goodbye, and Jack and Zero began their nightly stroll back home. They first passed by the town band led by Jimmy the saxophone player, who was a good friend of Jack's. The band was playing a soft, classical song that reminded Jack of his youth. Jack tossed a couple of coins to the band, as he always did, to show his respect, and the two continued on. After passing the band, Jack and Zero decided to take a shortcut through a cemetery. Halloween Town was full of them, but this particular one was their favorite. It was barren with only a few tombstones, the usual herbs such as deadly nightshade, and an occasional black cat perched on a tree. As part of their routine, Jack would yell, "Go, Zero, go!" and Zero would zip through the cemetery and try to find the bone that Jack had hid the day before. Zero would proceed to fetch the bone, bring it back, and Jack would toss it for him continuously until they made it all the way to the other side of the cemetery. As the two finally made it to Jack's house, Zero raced up the stairs. Unlike Zero, Jack was slow, for it had been a hard day's work, and he was finally starting to feel fatigued. As the Pumpkin King finally made his way through the doorway, he went over into the kitchen to whip up some dinner for Zero, which consisted of a few bone-shaped dog treats and a big plate of spider and snake casserole. Jack served himself a piping hot bowl of pumpkin soup, which was a recipe passed down in his family from generation to generation. The two ate next to the fireplace as they did every night. The home smelled like fresh, crisp apples just picked from the orchard, and the sound of Halloween music played in the background. For Jack liked to have some sort of noise playing in his home at all times. He found it very soothing. As Jack took his first bite of soup, he reached over to his coffee table to grab a book, but this wasn't just any kind of book. It was one all about fashion in the human world. It featured various designers and their creations. Some outfits were very simple, while others were very elaborate. He began browsing the pages, searching for inspiration for his Halloween ball attire. He wanted to look sophisticated, yet approachable. After all, this would be the first time some of the residents would be meeting him, and he wanted to make a good first impression. After an hour of searching, nothing caught Jack's eye. He put the book down and let out a sigh. "Thought I would find something I liked. Oh well, looks like I'm wearing the same thing I wear every single day," he said to himself. Jack stood up from his red suede chair and turned turned off the lights. "Come on, Zero, time for bed." Zero looks up from his water bowl and follows Jack to the bedroom, and the two settled in for the night. The next morning, Jack and Zero were awakened by the sound of the mayor's voice, who was reminding all of the residents about the Halloween ball that would be taking place that night. This was the mayor's normal routine. He was basically the town's newscaster. He would ride through the town in his compact black colored car with the large blowhorn attached to it and report to the town. He would give them the weather forecast sometimes, or the latest Halloween project that needed to be completed. It was one of the only things the mayor could do right and didn't need Jack's approval or help. As he cycled through the town, he eventually arrived at the front of Dr. Finkelstein's residence and made his announcements about the ball. Dr. Finkelstein was still in bed, sound asleep. He usually slept until noon most days because he spent most of the night experimenting in his laboratory. Sally, on the other hand, was wide awake. She was an early bird and always beat the sun before it rose. She was standing in the kitchen making herself a cup of witch's brew, which was her favorite flavor of tea. She was extra cheery today, and with good reason. "Today is the day of the Halloween ball. I hope it's a night to remember," she thought to herself. Sally was a hopeless romantic, and she had hoped to perhaps meet someone special. The young ragdoll spent a lot of her pastime sewing, but also reading stories. Her favorite book was about a young girl who had met her prince at a ball, so that was why Sally had high expectations for the night. Well, that concludes part 1 of How Jack Met Sally. Let me know what you think of the story so far, and also any future stories you would like to see down in the comments. As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.